Hello, my dears. How are you doing today? Well, Grandma wants to read you another story. And this one is Little Red Riding Hood. See, there's Little Red Riding Hood sitting in front of her cottage. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Elizabeth who lived with her mother in a house on the edge of a village. She was loved by all who knew her, but she was especially dear to her grandmother, who loved her more than anything in the world. One day, the grandmother sewed a red velvet cloak with a hood and gave it to Elizabeth for her birthday. It looked so pretty, and she liked it so much that she would wear it all the time, and therefore everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. Early one morning, her mother said to her, "Come here, Red Riding Hood, and listen to me. I want you to take this loaf of fresh bread, some of this sweet butter, and a bottle of juice to your grandmother. She is sick in bed, and they will do her a world of good. Go right away before the sun gets too hot. Promise me that you won't daydream and stray off the path. And don't run, or you'll fall down and break the bottle. And then there will be no juice for grandmother. And when you get there, please don't forget your manners. Say good morning, please, and thank you nicely without staring. And don't suck your finger. Don't stay too long, or else you will tire grandmother. And when you've had a nice visit, come straight home." So her mother was giving her lots of instructions, wasn't she? "Yes, Mama," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I promise I will do just as you tell me." There she is, listening to all the instructions from her mother. Now, her grandmother lived in a cottage in the middle of the forest, a good half-hour's walk from the village. But Little Red Riding Hood knew the way, so she was not afraid to go by herself. And when she had walked far enough into the woods to feel just a little lonely, who should she meet but a sly, hungry old wolf. She had no idea what a wicked animal he was, so she was not afraid of him at all. "Good morning," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Good morning." "Where are you off to so early in the day, my dear?" the wolf asked. "I'm going to grandmother's house. She is sick in bed, you know." "Is that so? And what have you got in your basket?" "A loaf of bread, some sweet butter, and a bottle of juice. Mamma and I baked yesterday, so I'm taking a loaf to grandmother. It will do her a world of good." "Isn't that nice?" said the wolf. "And where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?" "Oh, it's a good 15 minutes farther into the woods. Her house is the one by those three big oak trees, right next to the blackberry hedge. And there's a stream running by her garden. Surely you know the place," said Little Red Riding Hood. Was that a wise thing to give all that information to a stranger? The wolf thought to himself, "Ah, this tender little creature will be a plump morsel, a good dessert after the old woman. I must be clever about this so that I can make a good meal out of the two of them." He walked along with Little Red Riding Hood for a while, making polite conversation. And then he said, "Just look at those beautiful wildflowers. They are a sight, even for my tired eyes. I'm sure your grandmother would like some." Ah, Little Red Riding Hood looked away from the path, and when she saw the sunlight dancing through the trees and the wildflowers scattered throughout the ferns, she thought, "I'm sure grandmother would feel happier if I took her a bunch of flowers. They are a sight for tired old eyes, and it is still quite early in the day. I'll have plenty of time to pick them. Can you see that picture there? She's going off the path, and the wolf is running ahead. So she excused herself and said goodbye to the wolf and wandered off among the trees to pick the flowers. And she always saw another one, a prettier one, even farther away. And so she left the path and went deeper and deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, the wicked wolf went straight off to grandmother's cottage and knocked softly on the door. "Who's there?" asked the grandmother from her bed. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf in a tiny voice. "I brought you a loaf of bread, some sweet butter, and a bottle of juice. Let me in." "You'll have to lift the latch and let yourself in, dear," the grandmother called out. "I'm feeling too weak to get out of bed." So the wolf lifted the latch and opened the door. He ran straight to the bed, and without even saying good morning, he ate up the poor old grandmother in one gulp. Then he put on a clean nightgown and shawl that were lying on the chair by the bed. He got into bed and pulled the bed curtains closer around. In the meantime, Little Red Riding Hood wandered here and there picking flowers until she had such an armful she could barely hold them all. And then she suddenly remembered her grandmother and the promise she had made to her mother. So she found her way back to the path and walked straight to the cottage. When she got there, she was amazed to find the door open, and she tiptoed in. She felt quite frightened, but she didn't know why. "What's wrong?" she thought. "I always like coming to grandmother's so much. Why should I feel so afraid? Can it be because she's sick?" What do you think? Do you think she felt frightened because the grandmother was sick, or was some spirit trying to work on her to tell her to be careful? "Good morning, grandmother," she called, but there was no answer. Then she quietly went to the bedroom and pulled the bed curtains back. There lay her grandmother, but she had drawn the shawl down her face, and she looked very odd. Red Riding Hood couldn't help but stare. "Grandmother, what big hairy ears you've grown," she said. "The better to hear you with, my dear." "Oh, grandmother, your eyes are so shiny." "The better to see you with, my dear." "Your hands look so strange, grandmother." "The better to hug you with, my dear." "Please, grandmother, why do you have such big, sharp teeth?" "These are to eat you up with, my dear." And the wolf said this, he sprang out of bed and ate up poor Little Red Riding Hood. Then, having finished his first good meal in many weeks, that wicked wolf went back to bed and pulled the covers up and was soon snoring as loud as you please. Not long after, a huntsman from the village happened to be passing by the grandmother's cottage. "By Jiminy," he thought, the old lady is snoring much too loudly. Maybe I should stop and see if anything is the matter with her." So he went right into the house and up to the bed, where he saw the wolf fast asleep in the grandmother's nightgown and shawl, with a big, fat stomach full to bursting. Right away, the huntsman guessed what had happened. "So here you are, you old sinner," the huntsman said. "I've been looking for you all these years, and now this is where I find you." He raised his gun to shoot, but then he wondered if the wicked old wolf might have swallowed the grandmother whole, and if perhaps there was a chance she might still be saved. So he took out his knife, quickly killed the wolf while it lay sleeping. Then he carefully cut open the wolf's stomach. He had to be very careful. At the first cut, he saw the red velvet cloak, and after a few more slashes, a little girl jumped out and cried, "Oh, thank you. I was very frightened. It was so dark inside the wolf." Next, the grandmother climbed out, alive, but hardly able to breathe from fright and exhaustion. They thanked the huntsman with all their hearts, and he was so glad to see them both alive and well that he hugged Little Red Riding Hood and shook grandmother's hand over and over again. He was happy that he could save them, huh? They were all quite happy. The huntsman skinned the wolf and took the pelt home to nail on his door. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother sat down together to eat the bread and butter. After a while, the grandmother felt quite strong and healthy and began to clean up the mess that the wolf had made in the cottage. As Little Red Riding Hood walked home through the woods, she thought to herself, "I will never wander off the forest path again as long as I live. I should have kept my promise to my mother." She was comforted, though, that she had at least minded her manners and had always said, "Good morning, please, and thank you." Well, I think it's important to have good manners, but it's even more important to keep your promise and to do what your mother tells you to do. But that's a fun story. Little Red Riding Hood. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, Grandma loves you. Bye.